Two. All right, so Super Tuesday is officially over, done, gone, behind us, past. And we're still here. We're still here. And we got us a motherfucking race. Oh my God. So here's a quick rundown of what happened last night. First, there were a lot of really huge developments that happened. Bernie Sanders won every single state, with the exception of Massachusetts, outright, on question that he absolutely needed to win in order to still remain viable and to stay in the game. The media had predicted that this was going to be an absolute blowout for Hillary Clinton, and it wasn't. Yes, she won all of the southern states. Yes, she won big in those states. Yes, she outperformed a lot of the poll numbers in some of them. But this wasn't what Bernie Sanders absolutely delivered last night. The first big development that happened last night was Oklahoma feels the burn. Yeah. After Vermont, where Bernie Sanders won like 90% of the vote and pretty much got all the delegates, Oklahoma was the second state to feel the burn and to stay no to the establishment and to stand up for people over profits. Thank you, Oklahoma, and thank you for all the volunteers that got out to the vote in Oklahoma. He absolutely demolished her in Oklahoma. It was a pretty big lead. After the Oklahoma win, the second big development was Minnesota feeling the burn again. And then Colorado feeling the burn once again. Just delivering. Now, to go back to the Oklahoma story, this is a big deal. And the reason why it's a big deal was up until all day yesterday, Bing and a lot of people had projected Oklahoma to be a win for Hillary. Bernie Sanders destroyed that. It also shattered the media's talking point that Bernie Sanders will only win a couple northern states and he's not competitive in Republican states or in the South. He freaking delivered last night. The next big development, and this is kind of a bit of bad, the next big development is Massachusetts. This was a must-win state for Bernie Sanders. And if you've heard the news, you know that the Clintons, of course, playing their tricks again. Bill Clinton campaigning right outside of offices within 100 feet in violation of the election rule. The Attorney General of Massachusetts is now calling for his arrest for election fraud. Big deal. That's a pretty big deal. Despite all of that, despite trying to influence the elections like that, Bernie Sanders walks away with a tie in Massachusetts. I think Hillary only won by 1 point, by 1 percentage point. That's a big deal. They ended up splitting the delegates almost completely equally. Of course, we're not counting super delegates right now because they won't matter until the convention. The big problem with this is that Bernie Sanders needed to win this state. And the reason why he needed to win this state was to secure the Warren endorsement. Right now, what has happened, because it's a tie, it has now taken that armor away from Elizabeth Warren. If Hillary had won outright, then she could have said, well, she decided she wanted to leave her endorsement up to her constituents, and they decided to go with Hillary, so that's why she chose to endorse Hillary. And there wouldn't be much we could do to oppose that. If Bernie had won outright, then obviously she could have, she can say, okay, well, I endorse Bernie, and that would make sense and make a lot of people happy. with a 1 point difference and it going towards Hillary, now it gets interesting because she doesn't have any armor left. Now, if she endorses one candidate over the other, she is potentially splitting her base. So now it's a really tough decision for her. And now the question is going to be, and this will show a lot about her own personal integrity. If she chooses to go with Bernie Sanders, she would be making a very, very strong statement that she's choosing his policies at the risk of her own political agenda. If she chooses to go with Hillary and the establishment, however, she's showing that she doesn't really stand for anything and that she's just another politician saying stuff that we like just to keep her seat. So yeah, that's the big developments that happened. Make no mistake, we got ourselves a race on our hands, man. The media said that we were going to get absolutely demolished, and it did not happen. Other big developments, and something that people aren't going to be paying attention to, is the amount of delegates that Bernie was able to strip away from some of these southern states. He was able to score, 42 delegates in Texas? Yes, Hillary won it outright, getting 120. In some other states, he did end up doing really well in a lot of these states that had predicted that he was going to absolutely be demolished in them. Now, understand something, that this week and these last couple of days have been the biggest test for the Sanders campaign and will be the biggest test for the Sanders campaign. We've gotten through all the southern states that were leaning heavily, and they were pretty much guaranteed wins for Hillary. We've outraised Hillary 3-1. 3-1 just in February alone. You are making this possible, people. And understand something about Super Tuesday and what Super Tuesday is intended for. I saw this thing on PBS last night where they were talking about the origins of Super Tuesday. And where it comes from Southern Democrats who felt as if they didn't have enough influence in the party and thought that the party was moving too far to the left during the 80s, deciding to front load the primaries with a lot of southern states and keep the more ultra-liberal states at the back to where they were no longer relevant. California being the prime example of that, New York City, etc. So this is not a mistake that the states are set up this way for Super Tuesday. It's done so by design. And it's done so to give conservative and establishment candidates an advantage. Despite all of that, Bernie Sanders proved that he is a very strong and viable candidate. And despite the fact that, yes, Hillary did win a lot of southern states, we're still in the game, and you did your job. So I want to thank everybody in Texas, everybody in Arkansas. Even in Arkansas, Bernie Sanders beats Hillary by over 90% of the vote. Bernie Sanders still picked up like 30% of the vote in Arkansas? That's a big deal. That's her home state. You know, yeah, he got absolutely shut out in Alabama. And that's John Lewis's endorsement again coming into play there in the Congressional Black Caucus running against Bernie. But overall, seriously, we got ourselves a real fight in our hands, and we performed really well. The media isn't going to tell you this, but there's a freaking storm brewing, man. They're going to tell you that everything's clear, Hillary's locked it up, Bernie needs to drop out, all this bullshit. There's a freaking storm brewing, man. And we're going to take this thing. So let's keep fighting. keep phone banking, keep face banking, keep making those memes. I'm telling you, these are a game changer. Spread them everywhere you can. Get them all over the place. And we're going to win this thing. Feel the burn.